Scott, Nicole, Laura, and Bob, I need you guys to turn your videos on, please, while we're in our meeting. Scott, Nicole, Laura, and Bob, I need you guys to turn your videos on.
I see Laura.
In their meeting.
Okay, thank you.
Scott, Nicole, Laura, and Bob, I need you guys to turn your videos on.
I see Laura.
Okay, thank you.
Mine's not working.
Nicole, thank you. Nicole, if you just said something, we didn't hear you.
Hello?
Okay, now we can. Great, perfect. Okay.
We were trying to get my husband set up. He was removed from the meeting from the host. So I don't know what's going on with the meeting.
That was me. I did it by mistake. I'm sorry. I was
Okay.
trying to fix because it wasn't connecting.
Okay, I'll see if he's in.
All right, seeing how it's 6:30, I'd like to go ahead and start the meeting. We'll start with our Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. So we are going to adjust and remove public comment, as this entire meeting is about public comment. I want to remind everybody that this will be a very civil conversation. There will be no back and forth between board members and the public. Questions will be answered between myself, Katie, the superintendent, and Sam, our business manager. If there are any of those kind of questions. We're here to hear what you have to say. We would like you to make sure that you do tell us your name and the town that you represent, as this is being recorded, so that we know where to go, who is speaking at all times during the recording. So at this time, I would like to go ahead and allow for public comment. If you are wanting to raise your hand, you can also put your name in the chat, and we will go ahead and call on you as you are admitted into the chat.
Jill,
I don't
do you
have
want?
anyone yet. I don't have anyone yet. So
Yeah.
if they want to raise their hand or if they wanted to put their name in.
Jill, did you want me to do a quick review?
You're
You're
muted.
on
Jill.
mute. Yeah.
Do you have the slides that we had talked about to put up? We can just do that. People can see the slides if they have questions from the slides.
So I'm working on it. Just a minute. Can you check me, NJ?
You're set as co-host, but if you want me to bring it up, you can just.
It's not showing my, I'm not sure why it isn't.
Okay. Do you want me to bring them up?
Yeah, why don't you bring it up, because you have it?
Yeah.
Because it's not
Sure.
coming up on my end.
Sure. Let me just
Okay.
flop around here until I find it.
That's all right.
Can you see it okay?
Yes. Yeah. Okay. So I'll review overall so people can get a sense, a sense of where the board has been with learning about the proposed superintendent's budget. And just to refresh people, because some people might be coming on for the first time and haven't been as informed because, it's been a process. So I'm glad people are on tonight to hear more and to give comments. And so this process begins really in January as we work as a team, administrative team, and work in our business office and talk about everything that teachers are submitting for supplies, just going over everything that's needed in their buildings and what we need for a department. And this was really built on a needs budget and what we think we can fiscally afford, possibly. We know it's still being questioned about affordability, but really this is a needs-based budget. So I'm going to start with just kind of overview of the proposed cost centers 1 through 7. And if you want more information around all of this, we have a budget icon on our website. And so you certainly can go there to get more information. So here are the key things from these cost centers. There are no new positions. Instead, there's some shifts in positions coming out of our ARP funds, which are those federal funds that were issued to districts during COVID. And so we paid for 2 positions that we're now looking to pay for in the general fund. And those 2 positions are the assistant principal position at Oak Hill Middle School and an IT technician position that covers the elementary. We have 3 IT positions. We have 1 for the high school, 1 for the middle school, and 1 for the elementary level. So it's bringing those 2 positions into the general fund. We will be using some ARP funds for salaries for those positions in July, August, and September, because that grant ends September 30th. So we are allowed to use portions of salaries that were in the grant, but then we have to close it out. Then we also moved the assistant superintendent position from system administration cost center to student and staff support cost center, and retitling that position director of curriculum assessment and instruction / the ESSA director. And you often hear about that being a Title I grant. Is often how people know it as Title I. And so we're looking to fund a portion of that position with those funds that can be supported with the title being part of this and the responsibilities. So we're still looking at the assistant superintendent role and what parts of that position will move to the superintendent, the business manager, other people taking on more responsibility. And then this position focusing mostly on curriculum assessment instruction, but also having other responsibilities such as the nurses, our ELL program for English language learners, our gifted and talented programs. And there is a job description that was approved by the Personnel Committee last week. The other discussion is the Dean of Students position. So the Dean of Student position at Oak Hill Middle School was funded through those grant funds. And we have not asked for that position to come in to be paid for general fund. Instead, we're looking at a middle school teaching position to be reassigned to that. So right now we have 5 fifth grade teachers, 5 sixth grade, 5 7th grade, and 5 8th grade teachers. We have 4 teachers teaching the 4th grade. So when that 4th grade moves to 5th grade, there'll be a need for 4 teachers rather than 5 teachers. So that position would move to fill the void of the dean position with that position. So that's kind of an overview of the first section of cost centers that the board has reviewed. Next slide. So then we covered cost centers 8 through 11, which is our transportation, our operations, those cost centers. And the key parts of this are adding 1 bus driver position. So we will have 10 runs for 12 drivers. And so having the 2 additional drivers to cover when buses are not able to run due to other driver illness or appointments or things that can't be scheduled, not during runs. And when they aren't doing that, there are other things that need to be done. Our buses often need to be transported for maintenance. Also can be served as bus aids, supporting a bus when we have other, if they're not going to be doing a bus run. Also for trips, field trips. So having 2 drivers that are kind of float positions. Then we discussed the need for transportation to, right now, it's really 2 people trying to manage it with one of the people, which is the director of operations, also managing other hats. So that can be obviously a challenge. And so putting a person in a salaried position year round, right now the trip coordinator position is an hourly position and it is not year round. And so shifting, whether we call it, it was suggested at the board meeting, maybe not calling it director of transportation, but maybe transportation manager, but having somebody solely responsible for transportation is a proposal. The other part of that is having one of our drivers be assigned as a head bus driver and would receive an additional hourly wage. And that's really somebody to be the communication between that director or manager of transportation and the drivers. We have that a lot in our schools where we have department heads, we have team leaders. So it's like a team leader for our bus drivers. And what this does do, it allows us to do some shifting at minimal cost for the food service director role. So the assistant superintendent is doing the food service with support from Lisbon's food director. And so with that person leaving, we need to fill that void. And in order to fill that void, we've talked to the director of operations, who has already attended course certification, professional development in prep for this responsibility. So shifting transportation away and then shifting food service into that role, where the director of operations works a lot in the facilities, the custodial staff interface with the food service. So we felt that that was more of a complement than the transportation. This change is about a $12,000 increase rather than having to hire a director of food service, which would be just salary alone, maybe $64,000 or so, but then you have to add the benefits and so forth. So it would be obviously more than that. So this was a way to look at our current resources, reorganize in a way to address things that have been concerns and responsibilities that we need to move off the director of curriculum, where the assistant superintendent was doing that. NJ, you can move again. So the drivers, so those were kind of things that going on in those cost centers. The big drivers of the budget, and I did note on this slide that the red section would need to be added $60,000 to it, because we did get our employee health costs, and it is more than we budgeted. So we do need to make that adjustment, and we did make the board aware of that at the last meeting. So the drivers are employee salaries, which is accounting for approximately $519,000. Our employee benefits, which includes, if you've been reading in the news about paid leave, family paid leave, that the state is doing. We have to contribute to that. And then it's the 11.5% increase to our health insurance. So it's all of those benefits that go with the employee, and that's about $566,000. Then the other big pie pieces is maintenance. As you know, last year we reduced in the maintenance lines. And so we're coming back with $175,000 increase with the maintenance. And then special education has really two big components in it that's driving that, which is special education transportation, which we have been covering through the special education grant that can no longer sustain covering that cost. And we have to budget a 6% increase for out of district tuition students, which we budget 19. And so a combination of those increases is approximately $546,000. And then the other, which you see in the different cost centers, is 8.5%. So this kind of gives you a big picture of what's driving. So really, in order to keep our current staffing with the one additional bus driver would be about close to $1 million. Next slide. So this, as we work through the overview, we did not redo everything for the insurance increase. So that $60,000 would filter into every cost center, but knowing there's probably going to be changes, we have held off redoing all the cost centers, but showing you the bottom line. So every cost center that has employees, that $60,000 would be spread out among those employees that are in those cost centers. So we have an increase of 9.14%, which is close to a $2 million increase. And this does include, that bottom line does include the health insurance increase. Next slide. So this is how it breaks down for how do we pay for this budget. And obviously the two biggest revenue sources are the state contribution using the state fund, the local required contribution from the 3 towns in order to receive the state contribution. So this slide just really kind of tells folks how, when they calculate using the state formula to allocate state funds to our district, they give a total amount of using lots of different things. They do a per pupil cost based on our teacher, based on all our staff that we have. And then they do weighted amounts for economically disadvantaged, for our pre-K, for ELL. So there's different weights that also contribute. Special education, we had a huge increase in that area this year. It looks at our transportation, teacher retirement, and it also has our debt service on it. So there's a lot of things that go into the calculations, and they come up with a number. And then how do they decide how much each town must contribute in order to get the state contribution? And so they first look at the enrollment, and they take the district's enrollment and they allocate the Litchfield's enrollment, the Sabattis enrollment, and the Wales, and they get a percentage. And they take the percentage of that enrollment against the whole piece, right? So they determine Litchfield's got 33%, Sabattis has 48%, and then Wales has 17%. You'll notice in my note that Sabattis gets an additional $433,655 added to their amount because of the debt service. Okay, that goes to Sabattis. Then what they do is they determine about the valuation. So they look at a 3-year average evaluation, the valuation for the 3 towns, and they multiply it by a mill rate that's set. And the mill rate varies depending on how much money the state is putting towards education, and it adjusts to make sure that that money goes out equitably through the formula to every town, every school district. So they take the total, then they take and they divide out how much of that total is going to each town. Then they calculate the town's valuation, multiplied it by the mill rate, and that gives the amount that is required by the local to raise in order to get the state funds. And the difference is what we get for the state funds. So we'll go to the next slide, and hopefully it'll make more sense. So you can see each town, what the allocation was for each town. So you can see Litchfield was allocated $311,000 more, Sabattis $126,000, and Wales $176,000. The local contribution that each town has to raise in order to get the state funds. You see Litchfield had an increase of $91,000, Sabattis had an increase of $151,000, and Wales had an increase of $26,000. And then you can see what each town will be getting for state contribution. And Litchfield had an increase of $219,000 from the state. Sabattis had a decrease of $24,000, and Wales had an increase of $150,000. So next slide. So you can see over the years, the state contribution has gone from 11 million to 10.7 million, back to 11 million, back to 11 million. And this year we had an increase from the year before of approximately 330,000. Then you can see that the required local had an increase of 269,000. And our total allocation this year was $17.6 million, which is up 614,000 from last year. But you can see how it was divided, that we did get more state contribution for less local contribution, where last year we were having more local contribution for less state funds. So that's how, for just this state funding, when you hear us say the required local, this is what we're talking about. This is the required local and how it's calculated. Next slide. So then you hear, okay, additional local contribution. So the ED 279 sets a base value for all districts in the state of Maine using the same calculation formulas. And then in order to get the state funds, and then there's a need for additional local contribution on top of that in order to balance the budget. And so you can see here how this is calculated, and this is different than what I just spoke about. So there are two different formulas for required and additional. So this is how the additional is done. And so we take the state valuation, which is published, and we take that amount. You can find it if you look up what's the Litchfield or Sabattis Wales state valuation. And we use that number to determine what percent. So it's a 50-50 formula. So 50% of it is on state valuation. So you can see how it broke down that due to evaluation, Litchfield is 45%, Sabattis is 40%, and Wales is 15%. Then we use the October 1, 2023 student count, and that determines another percent for the other 50%. So you can see for that side, Litchfield is 34%, Sabattis is 48%, and Wales is 17%. And then it's calculated to what is the total percent. So the additional local that we need, we divide it up by these percentages to allocate to each town. So Litchfield is 39.8%, Sabattis is 44.2%, and Wales is 15.9%. Next slide. So you can see the difference in the local additional needed. So it had, we're up $1.4 million from last year of needing of the additional local contribution. Okay, next one. So this slide really tells you how everything for each town is calculated. So you can see for Litchfield, what its state contribution is up 219,000. Its local share is up 91,000. Its additional local share is up 595,000. Adult ed is down $168. School lunch is down $35,000. So then you can see the total difference from year over last year, from last year to this year, of $651,000. And then Sabattis for state contribution is minus 24,000. Required local share, 151,000. Additional local share, 597,000. And then for adult ed, minus 1,000. School lunch, minus 42,000. And they have an increase of $705,000. Wales had an increase of 150,000 for state contribution. For required local share, 26,000. Additional local share, 225,000. Adult ed, minus 376, and for school lunch, minus 14, for a total of $236,000 increase. So you can see the totals from last year to this year, and then the differences. And then looking at the mill rates, so confirming with the towns what they want us to use for evaluation to calculate the mill rate, how much the mill raises for each town. So you can see that in Litchfield, one mill raises $472,000, for Sabattis $376,000, and for Wales $189,000. And then we calculate how much do we need from each town that we noted on the required local and additional local, and for adult ed and school lunch. And that's what we're looking at for 100,000, 150,000, and a 200,000 evaluated home. We have been asked to add, 250,000 and 300,000 where evaluations have gone up on homes. So we will add those at a later time. And that's all I have to kind of set the stage for people that would like to comment.
You want me to stop sharing, Katie?
Sure. And then if we have to come back on, if there's a specific question, we can come back. Yeah.
All right, so at this time, if you have any questions, either raise your virtual hand or please type your name out in the chat so that we know that you do have a question
Or comment.
or comment. Yes, thank you.
There's a quick comment in the chat. Can there be a quick review for public can ask questions? So again, how they do that.
What do you,
Just to
Who is
review
the-
how they ask questions.
how they ask. We do have on our website an FAQ button. When you go to the budget page, we have a Q&A. So if you have a specific question that you want to ask, you can put that in there, and then we review those and give the answers. There are already questions that have been posted to the website that you can review. But any questions, just know that you can always be asking questions, and we update those as timely as we can.
So if you have a question for this evening, like I said before, either raise your virtual hand or write your name in the chat, and then you will be called upon to have your question answered or have your comment heard. Does that explain the other part of it? Okay.
There's a question from Jay Spencer in the chat. It says, what is the debt
Hang on.
service? Oop,
Hang
sorry.
on a second. So then I'm gonna have Jay Spencer unmute himself, introduce whoever they are, and tell us where they're from. And then they can go ahead and ask their question.
Oh, there. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, thank you.
Oh, good. It's actually, that's my son. Mine's Carol Spencer from Sabatis.
Thank
So,
you, Carol.
sure. I'm trying just to understand. I have a lot of questions, so I might post them some other place because it'll probably take the whole meeting. Where we have that superintendent agreement. We have roughly how many kids? About 45 kids coming up this season, this next school year. And what portion, since the state pays, but we got to cover the rest, how much is it per kid? And what town do they fall under? Who gets the burden?
So Carol, that was asked in the FAQ. So you can go there. And I'm still looking for an answer from the DOE around whether it even, whether our superintendent's agreements fall into the ED 279. So I'm clarifying that because they would not be assigned to the towns. What we do every year is we request our superintendent agreement funding, and then the state sends us that portion. So I just want to verify with them that information, but you'll see that I started that answer in the FAQ.
Okay, and if that's the case, hopefully we're getting more back because 45, let's say 45 kids roughly, that's a whole, at least a couple teachers extra that we have to add. I know they're all blended, but at least a couple teachers worth that we have to add to our budget to cover them.
So I'm going to verify I'm going to get the answer. Okay. It's just connecting with the DOE to make sure I have the correct information.
Okay, can I ask another one or do somebody else raise their hand? I can't tell.
Go for it, Carol. You've got the
So-
floor.
Sorry. So I wrote these all out because I can't just off the top of my head. The cost of living adjustment right now for Social Security this year was 3.2%. And I was looking up and many employers are about 3% average. And right now the annual rate of inflation was 8.5%. So the essentials we're paying for, mortgage, rent, electricity, fuel, groceries, everything is crazy gone up. I just don't understand how, with a budget of almost 10%, how you expect with the tax increase for people on a budget, on fixed incomes, to be able to cover this. Because I know my parents live with the new valuation. Hold on, I have a dog. Sorry about your ears. My parents have an evaluation now, and I don't even know if they can afford to stay in their home with almost $400 extra per year on a fixed income. So I'm just trying to justify a huge increase like that when we're not even getting increases like that in pay or seniors getting that increase.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have another question
Oh
or
yeah,
comment?
no,
Go
I
for
got
it.
more. Let me see. That was the same one. Oh, and we're creating the budget. I know most people are, you guys are in the education field. Have you had anybody in the finance field actually do the budget? Because I know I'm a banker and I go by the finance, the numbers, and I have to look at essentials that are needed, and then I dump off whatever we can't afford. So do you have people that are in finance with a finance background degree that are creating these budgets for you?
We have a business manager, and we review just what you're saying. We look at every line and we say, is this something we need in order to educate our students? And those are decisions that we go back and forth on all the time. And so, no, we don't hire an outside firm to do our budget.
Do we have anybody in our, let's say in our own school, the 4 towns, that we can actually hire instead that can actually create something like that?
It's not something we've looked into.
Okay, I'm done. I have more, but I got to write them down.
And you can put them, Carol, in the, as I said, in the Q&A. I'm out tomorrow and Friday. So if you put them in tonight, we probably will have them up by probably no later than next Wednesday. So I'll make
Okay.
sure. So just be checking back and forth on that. I
Yep.
do my, we as a team, we want to make sure we want the facts and the information to be accurate. So, but just add them there.
Okay, and one thing that I think you mentioned sorry, I changed my mind. Last meeting, I had asked, actually, I had asked a few different people to mention this. My parents aren't on Facebook. My parents don't have computers. My neighbors in my whole neighborhood have no idea, with no kids around, no idea what's going on with the school budget, but this all affects their taxes. So they're not on Facebook in places that normally I'm on there because I have kids in the community. One's homeschooled now.
Right.
But is there a way? There's got to be a way to get the information out, because last week I thought one of you said that you were going to get the information out to the townspeople, but my parents, nobody's gotten anything. My brother, nobody. So I'm just wondering what was sent out from last week so people would know about this meeting today.
Okay, so good. Sorry, Carol. We did not do a mailing, if that's what people expected. We did not mail something out. I let the towns know about the meeting and gave them information to post, but that wouldn't be helpful in that, is what you just said. So when the school board does the budget, we're getting ready for the public hearing, we do send a mailing out to all of our homes.
Okay, and
residents.
again, sorry. The other
That's
thing
all
is
right.
the people that when you send, even if you send it out like Sabatis town office sends it
Yeah.
on their Facebook page, whatever. Again, the most vulnerable people with the lower
Mhm.
income seniors don't do computer stuff. They're not
Right.
on those Facebook pages. So there has to
Mhm.
be some other way it could be given out to them so they have notification. I mean, I've ran over my whole neighborhood passing out papers, but I can't do that in the whole town.
Right, yeah. Okay.
I'm done now.
Lana, you had your hand up. Did you still have a question?
Yeah, I don't know if it's a question or a comment necessary. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, so I was just thinking, we've been back and forth with a budget, and I know we all understand there's, running schools take money. We need to pay teachers, we need to have the buildings going. But it is true, and our own budgets are getting smaller and smaller with inflations as it is. So as we're looking at this picture and we're looking at the little details of cutting like a couple grand here and there, it's really not making that much difference. Have we considered something more radical? And I hate that word, but for instance, how, like we supporting, how many buildings do we support right now? We have four schools and we have a central office, correct?
We have 5 schools in central office.
Yeah, that's right. 5.
Mhm.
Sorry, I forgot
Yeah,
about that
no,
one.
that's all right.
So how many people, for instance, at the central office?
Top of my head, here we go.
12.
12.
12. Could
Mhm.
we potentially save money by cutting the expenses from a central office and relocating 12 people within those 5 schools that we have? Or could we look at relocating the kids from one of the schools into another and combining the kids? I know we have moved from the Libby-Tozier last year in anticipation of expanding a new addition. Was it the year before? The 5th grade was moved to the middle school. So I know there's space in that one at least. So could we consider closing the central office and relocating people from those 12 people? Because I think that would be the easiest to relocate those to different buildings. Is that has been on the table?
Everything you're bringing up is stuff we're exploring and looking into. And I didn't say this in my starting, Lana, so please tune in next Wednesday. But next Wednesday, I'm bringing forward different options for consideration for reductions. And the board has asked as a starting point to reduce to get to an increase of, between 6 and 7%. And so we've been working really hard to come up with different options. So there'll be a lot more discussion next week.
Are you talking next Wednesday?
Yeah, next Wednesday.
Is it gonna be in the evening as well?
It'll be at 6:30 at central office.
Sharon, don't we have a meeting about some whales at the same time? I think there's a conflict here. The Wales has a meeting on an issue as well at the same time.
Well,
So April 10th would be our normal board meeting as
Right.
it would be. So it's just something that kind of happened that Wales has a public hearing at the same time as our normal scheduled board meeting that's been on the books for a year. So there's not much that I can really do to really change that. But that would be something you would have to discuss with Wales.
Okay, can we just put it in a note for the Wales administration?
We will let them know.
Thank you.
Thank you. Laura?
Can't hear you, Laura.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Weird that my video went off, but it may go back on. There are just some people that are sending me messages that they're not able to get in. So I don't know if anyone is just keeping an eye on the lobby and admitting people or not.
Okay, we'll take a look at that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Rocky?
Hello, can you guys hear me all right?
Yes. Can you just make sure to introduce yourself and tell us where you are from, please?
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure you guys could hear me first. Rocky from Sabatis. I had to switch to my phone because I was on the meeting on my laptop, and for some reason I got removed by the host. And then it's been a struggle to try and actually get onto the meeting. So I kind of heard bits and pieces because the YouTube link was messing up as well. As far as I know, the projected, numbers that you guys had put out on the website for the budget and talking about transportation, how many drivers do we have currently right now? And then I know that you had said something about having 10 buses run next year with 2 spare drivers. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
And how many do we have running right now?
I knew you were going to ask me that. So we have 9 of the 10 because we have not brought back the red run.
Yep.
Okay. And then we have 2 officially today. This afternoon, we have 2 spare drivers. And then we have 1 substitute that started this week. We have a couple more that we're working on becoming substitutes.
All right. Now, I know probably a month and a half ago, we supposedly had hired some more drivers so that we could get the buses up full running.
Mm-hmm.
And that we had also had spare drivers, but yet we still have buses down every day.
Mm-hmm.
And you guys are talking about increasing our budget and wanting more money from us, but a lot of parents have to take more time off from work in order to transport their child the education that they deserve.
Mm-hmm.
How are we planning on fixing this? Because right now it just kind of seems like they're empty promises as far as the fact that we've been told for months that you guys had hired new drivers and that you guys had substitutes, and then there's always buses down. We don't have enough drivers. Something's not meshing. So I'm just trying to look for some transparency. You guys are wanting us to put forth money to the school budget, and you can't show that you guys are being transparent with us. So how are we going to change this in the future?
So totally understand, Rocky. And what ended up happening is we had another driver. We have one of our substitutes now in a position for the rest of the school year. And, things are predictable and things are unpredictable. And it's difficult. We anticipated having a driver be ready to drive, and that got delayed until today. We had another driver start, matter of fact, signed papers on Tuesday and was on the road today covering. So I hear what you're saying, and every time, and I put this in, I think in the board email for an update, is we go 2 steps forward and 1 step back. I know it's frustrating. I know it's difficult, trying to be as transparent as possible every time we think we're fine. And, our drivers are under a lot of pressure themselves, that when they're not feeling well or they need something, or, so some things we don't know are going to happen that end up happening. So that's all I can say is every time someone says I'm willing to sell, we move as quickly as we can to get them on our books.
All right, that's all I have for now. Thank you.
Thank you, Rocky. Lana?
I'm kind of feel guilty that you're calling me again while others are not spoken out, but so feel free to
That's
bump me
okay.
off if somebody else needs to speak. But I wanted to address again the superintendent assistant position. So I hear we're going to be losing our superintendent. She's going to be, assistant, like Kathy is leaving. Thank you for your service, Kathy, by the way. We appreciate it. But with that position being, with her leaving and that position being open, I know you've mentioned that we're downsizing it to renaming to different positions. So I assume the pay is going to be lowered. Is that correct? Now, right? So it's not going to be a superintendent assistant. It's going to be a coordinator and stuff like that. My question is, are people picking up some of her other, is that why you're dropping the title and so somebody else picking up the slack on other jobs that she does? And in that case, can all of her current responsibilities be moved to an existent person's position and spread around? So then we don't have to replace that position with another member, with another person.
So a couple things. We moved, so we changed the title really because that seemed to be, as you said, having a superintendent, assistant superintendent for a district our size. And it had been a director position and was changed to assistant superintendent in order to cover when, with the former superintendent leaving, that allowed Kathy to take that responsibility. And so as we kept discussing the need to look at that again, we changed that. There would be no way that her position, to do something well, you have to have somebody with that expertise in that area. Not to say we don't have principals that could do some of that, but they have full plates. And my plate's full. We're looking at how we're going to manage some of the areas, like you said, picking up things that she does. We all have to take on more. And so I don't believe it would be in the best interest of the students, staff, and the school department to not have that position.
So did I understand you clearly? Is that mean that the price tag on that position is going to remain as is? Just
No,
the name going to change?
Well, first of all, it's negotiated. So you know, anticipating where it will land with negotiations with somebody who we decide to hire. It's like, it's not a set, here's the amount.
But I'm sure you're gonna start with something.
That would be part of negotiations.
Okay. Thank you.
Mhm.
Anyone else with a question or comment? Carol?
Yeah, I just remembered another one. You always compare us to Lisbon for their, they're similar to us size wise with students and such. I looked and found their proposed budget for next year is 20.7 million. Since we're compared to them, what's so different? And they have all these different positions that we're trying to be like them and adding all these extra positions. Why are we 2 million higher than them when we're basically almost the same? What's the difference? That's a lot of money different.
I mean, we'd have to look at it more in depth. I think people compare us because they're close to us and they're about the same size as we are. So I think that's where the comparison comes from. We'd have to dive deeper on their class sizes. We'd have to dive deeper into what they offer at their high school for programming. So there's a lot of facets. We have not done a side-by-side comparison.
Okay, I do have one more then. I know this is not going to fly. It's not going to be something people like. But when I worked for the bank, we had actually a 3-year wage freeze. And it was either that or we would lose coworkers because the bank couldn't afford to pay basically everybody with all these different raises. Has that ever been proposed because of all what we're going through right now as just a whole country with everything being so expensive and people can't afford things? I mean, I don't know what else you could do besides that, but that's what we ended up doing. We didn't get raises for basically 3 years.
I'm figuring that's a comment.
No, it's a question. See if that's something that's possible. I know collective bargaining, union.
Yeah,
I don't know. I'm not a union person, so I have no idea. I just know with unions, it's hard to basically, like BIW, you can't fire anybody. With a union, you have union representatives. You can't, doesn't matter what they do, you can't fire anybody. That's just how the union works. So it's hard to stop anything with the union. But is it possible? And that's just something to look into. If there's a way that we could do a freeze, let's say for the year, because otherwise, I don't see people in this town or any 3 towns voting for a budget that's going to be over even 3%, like the inflation and everything else, the cost of living, because it's just going to push people right to the edge.
So Carol, yes, it can be open. And not to say that I'm not listening or anything. If we do that, there is concern, obviously, that we would not maintain our current staff. Staff would probably look to go to a different district, perhaps. I'm not sure. I'm just saying to ask people to do that is a huge ask.
Tom Wood, you actually physically has his hand up. You probably all cannot see him, but Tom, you're next.
Thank you. My name is Tom Wood. I'm from Litchfield. And I have first a comment and then a question. The comment is that the board has a subcommittee that's looking into consolidating buildings. And they've gone to a great deal of work to investigate Sabattis Primary and Libby Tozier and Litchfield and doing an analysis, and the members of the committee represent all 3 towns. And there's been huge participation in that process, which I applaud. And that committee will be making a recommendation to that subcommittee, be recommendation to the committee, which will then make a recommendation to the board. And so in answer to the question, has anybody thought about, the answer is yes. And investigating responsible ways to do that and to look at what it means physically for the buildings, the students, and the budget. So that's my comment. The second piece is in reviewing these buildings and looking at last year's budget and things that were necessary, it seems, and I'm the chairman of the town budget committee, so this is not going to be a popular thing to come out of my mouth. Do you think the maintenance and operations budget is sufficient to keep the buildings in good working order for the coming year? And if not, what's at risk? That's my question.
I would answer this way, Tom, is the needs of the facilities is so high that it's hard to catch it, right? So the risk is what happened, you know, Libby Tozier's boiler needing emergency replacement. So it's a risk of something that we know is a deficiency finally coming to a head. And, you know, we've been told, well, then you go out to the community and ask for those funds to help support an emergency type situation. So, you know, even the basic painting the sides of the building, replacing siding, you know, things of those natures are even having trouble getting done in these budgets. I see your hand up again.
Yes.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I wasn't speaking of just Sabattis Primary and Libby Tozier,
Yeah.
but the assets of RSU4 contain some really good quality pieces of building and infrastructure within the buildings and sports and the rest. And to allow that to slide to a lesser level, I think would be sad and probably a mistake. And if there are other needs, it would be good to see what those might look like and at least give the voters an opportunity to consider what that would look like.
Yeah,
even though you're not putting them in the budget because you're trying to toe the line on keeping the increases to a minimum.
Yeah, we can add to the budget page, Tom, the capital improvement plan that Jonathan has put together.
Okay.
So we can add that material so people can see what is laid out for each building's needs.
Okay, that would be terrific because that's really the big picture as we move forward. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Tom. Up next will be Christine Garrett.
Hi, Christine Garrett from the town of Sabattis. I've got a couple of things. I want to echo what Tom just said. You know, I'm also on the facilities committee, subcommittee. And from what I've seen and what I've read, there was some kicking the can down the road by decades of, of our towns saying, oh, we're going to put off this critical maintenance. And now we are in we're in kind of the place where we are. So I think that really has to be considered here, that at what point do we shoot ourselves in the foot here with decreasing the budget to this bare bones sort of situation with deep cuts. So that's one thing. Two, I was wondering that when people are comparing us to Lisbon, are they comparing number of students? Is that the size you mean?
Yes.
Okay, so I just wanted to point out that the three towns of Sabattis, Wales, and Litchfield cover a far greater area than the town of Lisbon, which is going to add costs as you expand the area you are servicing. That will increase your costs as well. And then finally, I do finance for a nonprofit, and it's a little bit different than the private sector, than the for-profit sector. It's certainly different than the public sector as well, but it's a little bit closer. And again, when you do not adequately build your budget, you lose people, you lose resources, the facilities break down, people leave. If you don't keep up with the rise in inflation, you are cutting the budget. And while I am certainly understanding of, we're all being squeezed by this inflation, if we, unless we find a major cost savings by, closing one of the schools, consolidating, the central office, whatever it turns out to be, we are going to need to have a fairly large raise here, not just because of the high inflation last year and moderate inflation this year, but because, again, of what seems like decades of just not adequately funding a budget and putting off things that probably should have been dealt with. And, we all know it's hard, but I fully support the budget that has been provided here. I understand that, an increase of $400 or $600 in your yearly taxes is a big one. But I don't see anywhere in this budget that is extraneous or ridiculous or unnecessary. So that is no questions, just comments.
Thank you.
Thank you, Christine. And before it was Chad, now it's Kelly who has their hand up. So I'm not sure which one we're getting.
You're getting me.
Okay, welcome, Kelly.
Hi there. Okay. I have to mute Chad and he disappeared. There's an echo. Okay, that should be better. My inquiry lies in aligning time and salary with strengths, and adult and community education are a high priority in my own community engagement. With a 3/4 position salary and limited amount of hours and outreach to our community, maybe we consider some of Jim's strengths to grant writing and management, which he had successfully previously in his role as adult education with the 21st Century Grant. Could we consider potentially some of Kathy's grant, like her roles and responsibilities, maybe moving to him or to absorb some of that? Maybe consider applying again for the 21st Century Grant for our students in our district. That's it.
Thank you, Kelly. Does anyone else have any questions or comments? I'm not seeing any more hands raised. There's nothing else appearing in the chat. Katie, do you have anything that you would want to end with?
Well, I just thank everybody for coming out, giving the feedback and asking the questions and the comments. Really appreciate it. And next week is a big meeting for the board as we discuss the possible reductions to the budget. And so I hope all of you will tune in or we'll be in person next week. So hopefully you'll come turn out and be part of that discussion as well.
Yes, I echo what Katie said. Please attend next week. It will be in person. Any kind of reductions or anything else like that, we will go ahead and have all that information there, and we'll offer some time for the public to also have their opportunity to comment. So thank you everyone for attending this evening. It was appreciated. We heard some great things from some of our members. Keep looking at the website, keep looking at Facebook for updates. If there are no objections, I'm going to call this meeting adjourned at 7:34. Thank you.
Do you want me to go ahead and end it, Kathy?